Dave, we've talked a lot recently about leadership, but I just thought now we could broaden the conversation more broadly to change and how
Hmm.
people respond to change. And I know you've been doing a bit of thinking on this recently.
I have. You know me, Dave. I'm always thinking. That's what I'm good at. So they tell me. Yeah, so I've been thinking about attitudes because I've been trying to work on a sequel to my Power of Change presentation in the sense of showing people how I dealt with change. And I realized that I didn't really fully understand how I dealt with change. So being me, I wanted to come up with a picture or a model to show that. And I did what we call in Norfolk a 2x2, which is a 2x2 grid, as you can see, hopefully on the screen in front of you. And it struck me that the two axes were the vertical axis was whether you're practical or whether you're quite creative. And then there was an emotional horizontal axis of whether you're calm and reserved or whether you're emotional. And that allowed me to come up with sort of four categories of attitude towards change. And the way I came up with, or the ones I came up with, were these: stoic, artistic, academic, and strategic. And you'll note in my usual presentation Anaraki way, I've come up with 4 words all ending in IC because it
Well
makes
done.
for a nice flow. Just a little few tips there. And so the stoic is a person who is practical in the face of change. It's almost like, well, this is happening. What can I do about it? So that's the kind of, and I think I fall very much into that category. I don't know why, but that's kind of tends to, it is what it is category. Then you've got the practical person, but who might be more emotional, who can come up with a strategy to help themselves through it. So it's practical. They know they've got to go from here to here. So that means they've got to go from there to there to there to there to there, because they've perhaps got a bit more emotional empathy about the situation, and perhaps they're more in touch with their own emotions. I would sit there and just go, well, it's change, I'll deal with it. But someone who's more emotional might be able to come up with a route map that would take them through it. Then the bottom right, you've got creative and emotional people who might get quite upset initially. I can't work in these conditions, I'll be in my trailer. The much more kind of emotive and perhaps spontaneous approach. But they will probably come up with a way of dealing with it that's really quite unique to them and will be different. And then you've got the calm, reserved thinker who will probably want to work out a strategy or a theory of it, or read a book, or work out a model. So I suppose in a way I'm sort of stoic and a bit academic in the way I deal with change. So it was just a little a model to kind of provoke debate, and also perhaps allow people to think, well, where am I? Am I 50% stoic and 10% artistic and 40% strategic, or do I all sit in one quadrant, if you see what I mean? So it's just something to kind of provoke debate about how your mindset is about change.
Yeah, it certainly provokes for me an interest as a leader and needing to know the difference of your team members. If you had to apply this grid to your team members, where would you sit them based on what you know about them? And is it surprising that when teams are thrown together, particularly to do a project or a major program, they come together from all parts of the organisation? It would be amazing if everybody came together and everybody was strategic, or everybody was artistic, or everybody was academic. But you can see that wouldn't, if everybody was the same, it would be a weakness in the team anyway, because you'd have blind spots. Because everybody's different, and the challenge of the leader, I think, becomes how do you get the best out of people, and how do you get the academics working with the artistics and the stoics working with the strategics, given that they're completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that stoic artistic thing, it could be a real problem in a team, because you might have someone who goes, well, it is what it is, we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas the artistic person is getting quite emotional, they may need some more support, they may need a lot more information. And, that you could see that could build tensions in a team. One might think the other one is not appreciating how they feel, and the other one thinks the other one is exaggerating or just kind of not being practical at all. So I think you're right, from a leadership point of view, you almost need to understand the makeup of each individual within that unit, don't you?
Yeah, I did have an interesting situation a few years ago when the company had gone through a merger, and I was kind of based in the north of England, and we merged with a company based in Norfolk, in Norwich,
Really?
and
I
yeah,
may have
and
heard of them.
you may well have worked for them at some point. Um, and what was really puzzling for me was I was running a program to implement a major new product in the pensions market, and I was already running the project for the company that I worked for, and then I was asked to combine and run a project for the combined company. And in practical terms, it meant inheriting a whole project team from the company in Norwich. And it was weird for the first few months because every time I asked them to do something, they recognised that I was the program manager and they were project managers, and we talked about how the structure would fit together. So there was no question of kind of hierarchical challenge or challenges on authority. But every time I asked them to do something, the response, or most of the time, the response was, "Why would I want to do that?"
It's
And
very Norfolk.
yeah, well, I came to realise that, but it was well, okay, let's sit down. So I would spend time, I would sit down with them, I'd talk them through why it was the right thing to do, and then they would go off and do it.
Mm.
And after the third time it happened, why would I want to do that? I thought I cannot be explaining in detail, every single time. You know, we've set the purpose, we know what we're doing, we kind of talk about this stuff, but it was just a constant, what I thought was a negative view.
Mm.
And I said, well, you know, I had to explain to him, well, I'm your boss, and I'm really
That's
asking you to
one good
do,
reason.
I'm asking you to do something, and you know, I really want you to do it. Oh, okay then.
Mm.
But it was only when I spoke to one of the senior colleagues in fact, he did a presentation in Norwich to a room full of essentially Norwich people, but I was
Mm.
there as well. And he described it as a Norfolk and Norwich mentality, which was he told a story that he said if you're in a war situation and you're trying to take a hill
Mm.
and capture a hill, he said the Norfolk regiment isn't the one to do it for you, because they'll stand at the bottom and say, well, there's people shooting at us, why would we want to go up there? He said, but you can bet once you've taken the hill and you want to put some people up at the top to keep it there, he said the Norfolk Regiment will be a perfect fit.
Mm. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it raises all sorts of questions about culture and values and behaviours. And I suppose, having been a Norfolk man all my life, I probably didn't realise that that's the way we can come across. But I think it is quite a stoic attitude, but it's probably also because we've always been left alone historically.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
Norfolk is out on the right hand side of the country. You don't go anywhere else but Norfolk. You have to be wanting to go to Norfolk if you want to get there. And it probably explains why we didn't put a lot of signs back up after World War II. You know, people always complain in Norfolk that you get off the main road and there's no signs anymore, because we probably just never got you know, we took them all down to confused paratroopers, and we never got around to putting them back up again, because why would we want to? We know where we're going. we
yeah,
we know our way around. And that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because it sort of sits in the middle of the grid. It's like a vacuum, isn't it?
yeah,
But very determined once the purpose is revealed. You know, so but that kind of, that intellectual, why would I want to do that,
yeah.
is quite a difficult one. I do apologise for all the hassle you've obviously had from my brethren.
No, that's fine, Dave. The good news is that you still get the job. If this was an interview, I'd still give you the job based on this 2x2. So
Excellent.
that's a kind of segue into what we're going to do next. So next time we
Yep.
meet, I think we're going to be talking about interviewing and interviewing
Hmm.
skills and kind of what to do, what not to do, and the feedback you may or may not get. So it's been great catching up. Thanks for sharing the 2v2 with us, as you
No
call it,
worries.
and sorry about the Norfolk
Norfolk and
analogy.
good.
Yeah. Okay. Speak soon.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Dave.
mate. Cheers.
Cheers.